Well, Maddie, the goal in free agency is always to try and fill as many holes as we can, which, um, you know, I'm never going to sit here right before the draft and say, oh, we're good, we can just draft whoever. We still got spots that we want to add competition, both sides of the ball, and that'll be the plan. But, we don't feel like, man, we got to get, this or we got to get that. We're still, out there looking. We're 90% focused on the draft, but we're definitely still talking to players, and you guys have seen players have been signed by other teams recently. We'll continue searching around for various positions, but most of our focus is on next week for the draft.
You don't think you need a defensive back?
Do I think I need a defensive back?
Well, you say, I don't see a position
Like
that
a
we
safety
really,
or a corner or what?
Yeah, one of the two. I mean, depth-wise for safety, for future depth perhaps, corner maybe immediate.
Yeah, I'm looking for depth at a lot of spots, though. Like that one too, though. You're right. Yeah.
If Trey is not ready, hypothetically, for the opener, do you feel that corner spot needs to be manned by a rookie you might draft, or maybe ideally a veteran you can sign? What should be your preference?
Best player. I mean, if you think about, there's corners, if you're talking about that position, that get drafted every year, that some start right away, some don't start, but they work their way into start depending on, what's in front of them depth chart-wise. I mean, Trey started day one versus some players we've drafted in the first round or second round didn't start because we felt we had somebody ahead of them at the time. So to me, it would be, all right, if we were to draft a corner, how does he compare to the rest of our depth? And, if we draft two corners, maybe they're competing with that. So it's not a preference. It'd really be adding to the mix, and best man wins. And that's who would be out there the first week, week one.
I guess what I meant is that there seems to be a prevailing wisdom, belief out there. It's out there. It's maybe not in here, but that cornerback might be the biggest need that needs to be addressed this offseason, given that you lost Levi and given that Trey might where he is in his rehab and might not be fully 100%. And you don't seem to agree with that. You seem, I guess, I'm not challenging you, but is it fair to say you're comfortable with where that position depth is at right now?
Well, I'm not comfortable at a lot of positions, John. I'm truly not. I'm comfortable at quarterback, but I'm not comfortable at a lot of spots. Like we're honestly still looking, and yeah, we've looked at some veteran corners, but we got a cap, and we gotta work within that. And so it's fill as many spots as you can with fitting, all within the context of the cap. And then, again, adding more pieces, whether they're starters or depth players next week in the draft. But I get the question. I think it's not – I'm not saying you're out of line, but we got a lot of confidence in Dane and the guys here too. I mean, he's played for us 2 years in a row, and I'm a fan. I think he's done a really good job. And I think, again, how we build this thing as well, we build it up front. And so part of that is, if you're strong up front, you can help your back end. And so that's part of it too, where our purpose in free agency, we signed some D tackles. Obviously, we were able to sign Vaughn, but that was the focus there. We could have gone, I guess, less on the D line and said, hey, we'll stick with what we have here on the D line and maybe go target a higher end corner too. But just felt like this was the best path, and hopefully it'll prove to be the right move.
In that sense, your philosophy at this point, the way you approach free agency up front, is that it takes some of the pressure off the back end by getting to the quarterback faster.
Exactly.
Brandon, you've talked in the past about how you don't always have 32 first-round grades on players. I don't know if you want to give us your exact number, but how many first-round grades do you have this year?
Yeah, I don't have 32. It's definitely less.
Okay, so then factoring that in, sitting at 25, how does that influence the way that you look at the first round?
I think it's. I mean, last year, I'll go back to a year ago, we didn't have, 30 grade. We picked Greg at 30 maybe. We didn't have 30 or right even close to that, but we did have a first round on Greg. So I'm hopeful that we'll still be able to draft at 25 a player that we have a first round grade. If it's getting close to our pick and going, man, I don't think we're going to have, I think we're going to be dipping in the second round, I'll try and move back if I can.
So where you're at 25, is it almost like a coin flip in the sense that maybe if there's a guy that's sliding down that you do have that first round grade on, you might be more apt to go up versus he's not going to be there, we're going to try to move back. Does it really kind of open up both avenues for him?
It definitely does. Yeah, I would look at both, and depending on who the player is, like, and what am I giving up? Like, what's it going to cost me? What pick is it going to cost me? Is it going to cost me a third round pick? And how do I feel? How strong do I feel about the third round? Of like, all right, I'm giving up this player to go up and do this, but you know what? It's really worth it. I feel this is an impact player for us, right now, or maybe I don't. I want to let the board come to me. But again, you're spot on with how you said it. I think if the numbers are getting thin, I'm going to be looking both ways to see which is the best solution for us.
So this is the reality for you, right? This is where you want to be drafting at the bottom of the first round every year because it means you're a good team. Patience isn't always a virtue for competitive people, right? So how do you square that? How do you try to make sure that you don't do something irrational because you want your turn to come up?
Yeah, I'm probably my own worst enemy with patience. So I think that's why you see sometimes when I say aggressiveness in free agency, not dollar value, but my aggressiveness to fill as many holes as I can. Signing Vaughn, I know was different, but we were definitely going to try and add to the front and fill a lot of needs so that I don't have to feel the pressure. I cannot leave the first round or the second round without player X, or position X. And so that's really where it lies. But it is knowing your board, having a feel too of how the draft's going to fall. I think this year's going to be a little harder with, in past years we've kind of known where some of these quarterbacks were going and where some other guys might fall. It seems like a crapshoot right now to where the quarterbacks will fall, which will ultimately decide what position players get pushed down to 25.
You've said in the past that, to draft a guy in the first round, you have to be pretty confident that he's going to come in and earn a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talk so glowingly about Dane Jackson and the potential competition there for anybody who can draft him any round.
Yeah.
As you view this cornerback class, how deep is it? How top heavy is it? Because that's probably going to come into play when you're making this decision.
Yeah, I think there's some good players. I really do. I think you'll see corners drafted in a number of the rounds. I don't think it's like, man, if you don't get one now, you're out of luck. I do think there will be some guys, and I think we've had good fortune, with, Levi was undrafted. You can't predict that someone's going to have Levi's career, and even Dane's to this degree, but a lot of it is our work that we do into the type of competitors and the type of people and the refuse to lose. They've been doubted, whether it was Levi being a walk-on, and it's part of that is who we sometimes look for in those later rounds. Okay, he doesn't have all these physical schools, didn't test out of the waters at the combine or pro day, but these other traits tell you this guy's going to find a way to roster and then to help your team.
Is it the quarterbacks, you mentioned the quarterbacks, is it the quarterbacks that's made this seem a more volatile draft, at least when you're looking at it, or is it the draft in general, especially this first round? Because normally there appears to be more of a consensus of kind of where guys are going.
Yeah.
This seems to be all, at least from the outside for us, seems to be all over the board a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, not that I have it pegged down yet, but usually by now you're starting to feel where, let's just call it, the quarterbacks are going to go, the Myles Garrett, the Chase Youngs, when those guys come out, just clear-cut, premium pass rushers, and then left tackles. Those guys you can kind of man, this guy's going to protect my franchise quarterback. You can kind of tell, all right, we kind of know the first 5, 6 picks in some form or fashion. Then you can start pegging it down to who's going to be available. This year, you don't know that, and it starts with the quarterbacks. I think there are pass rushers, but I don't think there are guys right now that you would say are at the level of some of the players I mentioned as pass rushers.
Does that make it more difficult for you to prepare for who's going to be around at that 25 range? Like, how does that impact your preparations for the draft with that more uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do mocks next week, and we're going to try our best to put ourselves in as many scenarios as we can. I'm hopeful that when I'm sitting on the clock Thursday night that, it won't be the exact scenario, but it'll be something similar that we've discussed. It makes it really easy. But again, you have 10 minutes between each pick, which also helps. When you get 5 to 7 away, you can start looking at some of the teams in front of you and get a feel for where they may be targeting, or at least down to 2 or 3 positions they may be targeting. And oh, you know what? This team really, really may like this player that we got one guy left in the first round. We want to get in front of them. But I don't think we'll have a good feel of what's going to be on the clock for us truly until we probably get 5, 7, 8 picks away.
Given the COVID, some guys decided to stay in school for a 5th year because of COVID, and a couple guys the 6th year. What effect, do you see that effect on your day 3 board? Do you think, are there maybe a few more players on your board on day 3 than there might be? Is there going to be more competition, more potential UDFAs than there might be in a normal year?
Yeah, I think, Mark, good question. I think there's definitely more guys in this draft that would have normally been available, guys that went back, and I think you're spot on. They're more day 3 players because they stayed to try and up their stock. And, the guys that were going to leave no matter what as first, second rounders left a year ago or previously. But I do think you'll see potentially more guys that were undrafted. In some years they would have been drafted, and maybe they'll make clubs than in the past. There's always stories of undrafted guys that make it, but I could see a scenario where, there's more that come out this year just because in other years with less depth there, they would have probably been a draft pick.
How does the number of picks play into things? Because you've got 8 picks, and you've got a roster that's built to contend for a Super Bowl. 8 guys aren't probably making this team. Does that mean you're more apt to maybe combine some picks and move up, or do you just want to have those lottery tickets and maybe you hit on a guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going into the draft, Matt, saying, all right, 8 guys can't make it, no way, no how, let's figure out. But I'm also not trying to draft a player that I'm going, the minute I turn the card in, I don't see this guy making the roster. So it is a fine balance. But you're also trying to add depth. And whether it's a draft pick, a guy after the draft, in 2 weeks from now, we're trying to go to camp with the strongest 90-man roster we can have because we all know injuries happen. And so there are guys that, I want to be better than this player when we get to the 53, but I also want the best option for us there. And I'm trying to minimize the drop-off from the starter to the backup to the third guy. And it also helps you, when you get in the preseason, it's important that running with that second and third team that you have good players, as many good players as you can to evaluate everyone else. If you've got a bad O-line as your second O-line or your third O-line, well, guess what? You can't evaluate that quarterback, and if he's on his back, you can't evaluate the receivers, and it just becomes a domino effect. So that's a long-winded answer, but yes, there may be a pick or 2 that we have that don't make it, but hopefully if they don't, we get them to practice squad. But we would be open to using them as well if we're, thinking, man, there's no way this guy's making it, or we're running out of players that don't make it. Let's trade up, in the 5th round or even earlier. But I'm really just going to follow the board, how we've said it. We've put a lot of work into it. And just if the board tells me, we need to move up, this is a valuable player that can help us, we'll do it. If it doesn't, then we'll stay pat or move back.
For And where do things stand currently with Jordan?
With Jordan, well, Joe, I'm a big fan of Jordan. I think he's done a great job here for 5 years, and I know what's been reported out there, and I don't talk about contracts just like we didn't talk about Steph or Josh or any of the other guys. So there's really not a lot more. I got nothing but glowing things to say about Jordan and his family. That's probably as deep as I can get into it. I wish he was here, but that's I wish any player that's not here was here. We just enjoy not only seeing them grow on the field, but it's the bonding piece. But it's voluntary, so that's fair when players choose not to show.
On the flip side, when you say you don't like to negotiate through the media, everything like that, when you see Jordan's representation say we've reached out to the Bills for an extension, does that disappoint you at all with how things
No, I mean I think everybody gets to do it the way they want to do it. We don't get to, every team gets to conduct business how they want to, and every agency or player gets to conduct it. We control what the Bills do, and I would just say that he's got a really good agent. I've worked with Drew for a number of years, and we've always had a great relationship. So there's no conflict, anything like that. Drew's been in it a long time, much longer than I've done it, and he's a heck of an agent. And we'll do business the way we do it, and they'll do it the way they think's best for them.
How do you view the player? Take the money and the negotiations out of it, but Jordan is a player coming off the season that he did, and the potential longevity that he still has left in the league. How do you view him?
Well, I look at it as the now. I mean, Jordan's been a really good player. He's been a good pro. I think he's done a great job. He's been an integral part of our defense. When you look at some of the steady pieces that have been here through when it wasn't as good to where we are now, and I give him and some of those other guys a lot of credit for being here, and he's been a big part of it. And I want Jordan here. I mean, that's I'm not looking for anything different than that. It's just business gets in the way sometimes, and I respect that. I'm not upset or anything. It's you want everybody to be happy and thrilled with their contract. I doubt every employee's walking around here high-fiving their boss going, I love all the money. You know what I mean? It's part of the business, and you can't let it get you down. Like, there's no way I'm ever going to walk in here and have every employee and every player and every coach say, man, I'm making so much money, I'm thrilled. Like, it's not reality. And especially in this business, what happens, you're coming off free agency. Guys see guys getting paid. I'm going to need water in a minute, Derek. You see guys getting paid, and you're like, man, I feel like I'm better than that guy. I got more, skins on the wall than he does. How did he get this? Well, sometimes if guys choose to play it out, they're rewarded. Sometimes they're not. Things get in the way, injuries and other things. And but I'm a big fan of Jordan Poyer, and you'll never get me to say anything different.
At what point do you have to kind of put a wall up as to okay, you can't extend everybody, you can't go above the value that's placed. At what point does that become part of the discussion for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. There's other guys here that want to be paid too. I mean, I know that one is out in public, but that's not the only agent of a player this offseason that's on the Bills that what about my guy? What are you thinking? Is there a plan now? Is there a plan after the draft? Is there a plan at all? And we've had those conversations, and that happens every year. Some do work their way into the media for whatever reason, whether it's a player not showing, whether it's the agent discussing it. But I want to pay them all, Joe. Back to what I was saying, the ones that deserve it and have earned it. And there's other guys here that I feel have earned it as well and want to do it. And there's guys that have left here since I've been here that I wanted to pay, but or our organization wanted to pay, but you can't pay them all to the point of your question, and that's hard because I'm a people person. I love these guys and love them to death, but I also have a job to do, and I have rules to follow from a cap standpoint and cash. And so, unfortunately, you have to say goodbye to some. And yeah, again, there's more than just Jordan that would, be looking to get an extension. We just, right now we're focused on the draft.
To go back to what you're talking about having the 8 guys and always looking for depth, just generally, has your day 3 philosophy changed at all now that this roster is deeper than when you first got here with the team?
Yes and no. It's still just following the board. I think every draft is different, Catherine. Like, there's some drafts where you're going, man, we get into the 5th round. I don't know how fired up. Like, even if I draft one of these guys and he makes it this year, like, we got to get better than that. And then there's other years where it's deeper. I feel like this is a deeper draft, to Mark's point, and in the back end of the draft because of the COVID and all that. And so I think it's my job and our staff's job to analyze each draft and find out what positions have depth, and then where is the depth in the rounds? Like, where are you getting the best value? And you know what? This year, I'm just making this up, but this year, I don't see the value in the 1st round, but I see the value in I'm making it 4th round, okay, or 4th and 5th round. Well, maybe I'm more willing to add picks there, and I don't care if I don't make as many picks up top. Or, like I said earlier, man, I don't really want many picks after the 5th round. I don't think they're going to help us. And if they help us this year, we're going to be replacing them next year anyway. So let me move up. Does that make sense?
I know we've asked you every year, Brandon, it appears, I think, about running back early in the draft. And I know you always say that, hey, if there's a guy there, I'm not close to the idea, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But the way that you have operated has been middle round picks. You haven't spent a lot of money in free agency necessarily on running backs. Has that been your philosophy of roster construction, that position specifically, considering what you pay your quarterback and around it? Or is it just the way that it's basically been?
It's just the way it falls. I mean, we've had guys on our board in the 1st round since I've been here that are running backs. We have. But if we chose someone else, we thought they were a better player or more valuable player to what we're adding. Sometimes it gets down to position value, which is part of what you're asking too. But if there's a player that I think is dynamic enough as a running back and can add an element to our offense this year, next year, whenever, we would still take him. Okay, but it would have to be over. He's got to be dynamic enough to be over another position that maybe is considered a higher position value.
Do you feel that you have enough at your, I would say, 3rd outside wide receiver spot? I'm counting Jameson and Isaiah in the slot right now.
Mhm.
So if you say Stephon and Gabe outside, do you feel you have enough right there behind them, given the inexperience of those guys?
I'm going to ditto what I said to Waro a while ago. I don't feel we have enough at almost anything, and we're looking to add everywhere. It's just, and I would tell all our players that. Like, I'm trying to add as much competition as I can, and after this draft, we're still going to look, because guess what? Some people are going to get released, and if there's a player that we say, you know what, this guy, he could be the 50th player of our 53. I think he can make it. I think he can help us. We'll try and do it if he makes us that much stronger as a depth piece.
And with the place your roster is in right now, coupled with some of these big time moves that you made, obviously you're all in. Is this a year in the draft where you might be more inclined, if there's a couple guys that you want to go up and get, to sacrifice draft assets, not only this year, but maybe even next year, because it's almost like it's a Super Bowl or nothing kind of season for you?
It's not that. It's not that. It's not. It's not. I understand the question, Sal, and I get why people would think that, but this is not a 1 year, we got to get to the Super Bowl or not. I want to get to the Super Bowl every year, but we can win the Super Bowl this year, and we're going to be fighting like hell to get back there next year. And so no move we made this year was an all-in, you better do it now. Like, we've got a plan, and we're going to stay competitive. That's the plan. I mean, that's my job. But I don't know. Never say never. I'm never going to try and I said never say never, and I said never, but I'm rarely, I don't know a case where I'm going to say, let's push all our chips to the plate and, to the table, and let's do it all right now and don't worry about the next year. That's not what we're doing. I promise you.
Have you been able to, how much have you, has the ability to go and get a Von Miller and to make somebody, and to re-sign Diggs to that contract, how much is that, have you benefited roster-wise, salary cap-wise, from having 26 draft picks from last year's team on your roster? Just having those rookie contracts still on your roster. Now, mind you, it's not 26 now going into this year, but how much has that benefited, helped benefit you being able to make those moves? Because that would seem to be the problem years before your arrival, that this team couldn't keep draft picks.
Yeah, I mean, the foundation of your team, when I set up here, when the Pagulas hired me, was we got to draft, develop, and re-sign. And that's what we tried to do as many times as we can. The foundation of how you build it doesn't change. Yeah, you may get a little more aggressive a year or two if you feel your team is closer. You're trying to get over the hump, and that's really what our moves have been this year. Is not an all-in as much as it is just trying to get across that finish line. And we came up short against, in the AFC Championship against the Chiefs, and then the year before, this past year against the Chiefs. And trying to get over the hump. What can we do? We're close, but we're obviously not there. So what do we got to do? But you still have to have many foundational draft picks to be able to do that. You can't just go buy players. It's not going to work, I don't think.
How does basically these phase one workouts help your draft process? And I know that you say you're trying to, look at all areas, but what position specifically you think is the biggest question mark on this roster?
I wouldn't go into what I think is the biggest question mark, Mookie. That wouldn't do me any good. And listen, you could walk down this hall and ask some of our scouts or coaches. I don't think you're getting the same answer, just by the conversations we've had in the draft room. But phase one, is more than anything. It's just getting the guys back in here and seeing who's in shape and seeing who needs to get in shape. But as I said earlier, the best thing about this has been just, the guys, the camaraderie. This is where the most important thing about the offseason, yes, you got to get in shape. But guys can go do things at other places. But what you can't get, if I got guys in Florida, Arizona, California, wherever, you can't get that bond, and that's where we talk about training camp, going up there. It's for various reasons, but the number one reason to go to training camp, to go away, is to force that bond and just, we all know the adversity that every team, you guys cover us, and you can point back to what happened in that season and how they handled it. Did it derail the season, or did they manage to fight their way through it and get back on track? And I think last year you saw that. We were waffling, win one, lose one, over and over, and we finally got the train back on the tracks, and we were playing really good football till the very end.
Now that you look back at that, what got the train back on the tracks?
Yeah, I think it's culture and people, and no finger pointing. People, we didn't have an issue of blame. Offense blame the defense, defense blame the offensive, players blaming coaches, coaches blaming players, front office, whatever. It was people saying, you know what, looking in the mirror, and I got to do my part, and we just got to get back to work. Talk is cheap. When you're on a 5-game win streak, people are telling you how great you are and you're going to win the Super Bowl. You shouldn't listen to that. And then, but you win one, lose one, or lose 2 in a row, or whatever. The outside people don't define you, you define yourself. And I think that's what Sean's done a great job of, is being real with our team and not listening to the outside noise of what is the problem. We know internally what it is. We just got to be men about it and fix it.
With the COVID protocols being dropped, how much easier has it been to meet and evaluate players?
Yeah, it's been, this process through the spring was great. 30 visits. We had our last player in today. Today's the last day you can do it by league rules. So just that part along, adding the ability to bring 30 players in, meet a lot of our staff, just get a feel for them for a day, take them out to dinner, whatever the case may be. And then, again, we sent a lot of our scouts and some coaches out on some pro days and privates. We haven't been able to do that much. Last year the pro days came back, but you really couldn't do the privates. And I feel like we know this crop of players definitely better than 2 years ago, and still better than last year.
Brandon, two-part question. How do you view, I know there's always going to be competition at every position, every starting job. How do you view Gabriel Davis, and what are your overall impressions now that you're all the way through the process ahead of the draft of this wide receiver group in the draft?
Gabriel is he's a stud, and I mean that in all sense. His habits, he is serious about football. I think we all remember when we turned the pick in, the guy's out working out. Like, he's just so driven, and that's not fake. I mean, some people do that for fake. That's him, and I can tell you why it's him, because he just had a heck of a game to finish his season and put him on the map. We knew about him. I think you guys had a good feel for him. He's had 2 good camps, and his rookie camp, and then again this past season. As the offense flows, he was probably overlooked in this offense a little bit. But when his numbers called, go back to that Colts game a year ago in the playoffs. I don't know if we win that game if we don't have Gabe Davis. And so you can say we made it to the AFC Championship. Gabe Davis was a key part of that. And then obviously the plays he made down the stretch last year, and then in the Chiefs game. But, I see him yesterday, first time at the coffee station, and, I mean, I don't even know if he took a day off. I hope he did. I didn't get into that. But he looks like he's ready to play, like he could play. And I wouldn't say every player I've seen – look, even his eyes. I mean, just he's got that look. The eye of the tiger. Like, I'll go to war with Gabe Davis any day of the week. The receiver draft, without giving away. I mean, I think you're going to see receivers every year from now on being one of the deeper classes because of all the 7-on-7s and all the passing that's starting at youth level. You go watch Pop Warner football; they're chucking the ball. None of us got to do that when we were little. If you threw it twice a game, you're lucky. So I think that's going to be a position that will generally be one of the deeper ones in every draft.
You talked to Sean earlier about his plan for draft night. He was joking, but kind of described a very nervous energy. What is he like on draft night as he's watching everything unfold?
He's probably sitting there looking at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm sure it's probably a little bit like me on game day. Like you're like, what are we doing? I'm going, what play are we calling? Like, what are we, and he's like, where are you thinking of going here with this pick? Where are your eyes at? And then we narrow it down and kind of talk it through. Let's, hey Sean, how would, if we took this player on offense, let's talk about the fit. We got him graded similar, or this defense, what's your opinion? How would you view him? Maybe that comes down to right now this guy would play a lot more for us just because of our depth, and maybe that's where I lean. I go, okay, you know what, that makes sense to me. I may go there. So he's a good support system in all seriousness there, and as is the scouts as well. But he's good. I'm sure at times he's probably getting antsy. But he didn't have to get antsy. I get probably antsier than anybody. I have to, keep myself from, moving up and getting too antsy.
Vaughn said that he was actively recruiting Joe Hayden on the golf course this offseason. Has he relayed those messages to you?
No, he hasn't. Only thing about golf Vaughn and I talked about was I asked him, did he bring his clubs here yet? And he said he's got them, so the weather hasn't scared him off. But no, nothing about Joe Hayden.
How do you look at each team? Each offseason, you always look at the past season and what the needs were, and what maybe some of the deficiencies and what the strengths were. When you look at how just this past season ended, it based on a coin flip. How do you square your ideas on the roster and what its needs are based on the season that ended on essentially a coin flip?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I appreciate the coin flip thing. We could have done things in the game, John, to not let it get to a coin flip. I mean, that's the first thing you got to do is look at yourself. And I go back and look at what could I have done with the roster better to do that. And I'm sure, as great as Josh played, there's things he goes, man, maybe if I'd have done this, or somebody on defense or a coach or whoever. We all kind of just that's how we're wired. But I don't. I just look at what went well for the season, look at it in the totality. You can't just judge one game, although your last game will still tell you a lot if you make the playoffs, where you're deficient. And, the one thing in free agency was, I wanted to be more consistent up front. And, it's a quarterback league, and, we have a quarterback, but we also have to be as consistent as we can of not only harassing the other quarterback, but getting him to the ground. And, that's probably where, the impetus was to, okay, if there's a player like Von Miller, take a swing and see if you can make it work.
What is it going to be like, on draft night without Joe Shane being available? Think you're going to give him a call on draft night?
There'll be more sweets for me to eat. Although he's done that weight loss thing again up there. He's trying to get Dable down. I saw him at the owners' meetings. Joe looks emaciated right now. But I told him I was going to send him a box of cheeseburgers. So in all seriousness, though, no, I'll miss Joe. Just the laughs and us wagering to each other if this player's going to go before that. But some others will take the place. We have some wagers already that we battle with. What happens is you're battling with the scouts, and they're digging in, and I'm digging in, and or whoever, or two scouts are digging in against each other, and so we say, all right, go to the board, put it on the board. What are you willing to lose here? And so there, after the draft, that's always fun. We kind of hash it out and make fun of who was right who was wrong, and the ones that were right get to gloat a little bit. But no, it'll be fun. I'm sure we'll talk every day before the draft, and then he'll probably call when I turn the pick in and tell me something like, "Did you know that guy got arrested yesterday?" or something stupid like that. Did you hear about that? I know that's probably coming, but I'll have some things for him too.
It seems like we're in a different era now where players and agents are really kind of dictating a lot of what happens in the league, maybe more than ever before, all the movement around and things like that. You always talk about being a people business. Mm-hmm. Is that, with this now, this kind of new era, the way I'm phrasing it, is that when it really shows up, people business, to really have those relationships built in and to really massage those relationships and keep them going?
I think it helps. I mean, I think you gotta be honest with people, and you gotta treat them with respect. And if you try and BS players or BS agents, I don't think they're going to respect you for it. And sometimes the honest answer is we're going to have to part ways too. That's the reality of the business. Back to you can't sign everybody. So, yeah, I think when you get into tough times, that's where you lean on the relationships. And at least if you disagree on your stance, hey, you know what? I think this player's worth, I'm saying to the agent, I think this player's worth $20 million. The club, think is worth $12 million. Well, that's a big gap. Probably not going to close that gap, if you're that far apart. If you close that gap, somebody was really probably way too high or too low. Sometimes you just have to agree to disagree. And there's other times, Sal, where you're honest and you say, hey, I agree with you. I'm not saying you're way off. It's your proposal, but we just can't do it right now, and that's not where we're at. We have some other things, or we have some things we have to commit to, and it's not going to fit within our cap, and that's the hard part of the business.
I guess what I'm asking too is, though, it seems like some of this stuff is rooted in not money for some of these guys and things that are going on.
Yeah.
And that's where that people part of the business can come into play.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was trying to say as far as, you can't BS people. I can't call a player and just say, hey, I want you to play for this. I'm not going to give you the credit that you deserve. Like when we talk about players, we talk about comps, just like when you're selling a home. What are the comps? And if I'm telling his agent, if really he's in this group of comps, and I'm telling his agent he's down here, and I'm trying to identify all the negatives on the player and not the positives, that's probably not going to end well. And so you got to be realistic. And sometimes it's our job to get the agent to be realistic too. Sometimes they see him too far up here, and you find it. But I just think if I'm trying to not give them the credit, maybe we don't do a deal, but I at least got to try to do my best to be fair and acknowledge that you're right. That is the area we just can't go there right now. Again, sometimes you got to walk away, but I found that you get more done by being true, authentic person than not.
How much of an impact did the wide receiver kind of free agent explosion that happened have on getting that deal done with Steph and the timing and all that? How much of a role did that play in those negotiations?
Yeah, I mean, the markets change every year. We knew when we traded for Steph that part of the value of that trade, if he was the player that we thought he would be in our system with our quarterback, we knew that. And I think going into last season, he was like 19th in annual salary for wide receivers, which, fairness to Steph, was probably low, but that was part of. So we had honest dialogue, with his group, and we said it, after this season, we would take a look, but and we'll handle accordingly. And without getting into deep detail, that's kind of how it got done.
When it comes to Brian Dable departing and Josh Allen entering his first offseason without Brian, how much more do you think he benefited from having that extra year with Brian, the fourth year with Brian, in being more comfortable in being part of this transition with the new offensive coordinator, even as familiar as he is with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think continuity was one of the goals that we had when we drafted Josh, was continuity with the head coach, the GM, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback coach. And the only thing that changed for Josh was the quarterback coach after year one, with Culley going to Baltimore and Ken Dorsey coming in. So as many years as you can have that continuity, I think every year that Brian was able, we thought we may lose Brian a year earlier. So I think another year just helped build that, and it was another year that Josh and Ken could grow in their own way. And I think that trust expanded. And so I would say, without speaking for Josh, that I feel him and Ken are even more comfortable with each other going into this year than they were a year ago, because naturally they've worked together another year. So I think it definitely benefited. All right, thank you.